Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we have finally reached part 3 of our 3-part series of looking back at previous Ohio State teams to figure out who we could add to the 2024 Ohio State team to make that a better team, give them a better chance of winning the national championship. And when we reach part 3, Tony, of a series, it can only mean one thing. We must be getting close to Big Ten Media Days, because we're wrapping up the really, sort of evergreen summer content, but man, oh man, I can almost feel the little pellets from the Lucas Oil Stadium turf in my shoes already. So close to the season, Tony.
I can feel the frustration and the lack of Wi-Fi growing as we're talking right now. No, I always enjoy the Big Ten Media Day. It's kind of like it's the season. It's it's Christmas music basically. There should be Big Ten Media Days music that and you go to Meyer or Walmart or whatever, and they've got the decorations out. Oh, Big Ten Media Day is right around the corner. They've got the decorations out already, and so that's what it's like for us media types. But so we are continuing. We're finishing up, as Tom said.
Tony, they do have Big Ten Media Days music. It makes it impossible for us to monetize anything we shoot on the field before the event starts. You know that.
Yes, that is another annoyance, but I shouldn't say annoyance. That is another great feature. Thank you. All right, so Tom, I let you go first. The first two shows when we did the Cooper era and the Tressel era, I'm going to go first with the Urban Meyer era, and the way I think we're laying the groundwork as we do the show in terms of who is Urban Meyer era, who is Ryan Day era. For me, if they played for Ryan Day as a head coach, I don't consider them in this. So I'm just letting you know that right now. So basically, 2012 to 2018, the Urban Meyer era, those years. And if somebody was past that, then yeah, that's a Ryan Day guy. So, Tom, you may disagree with that. We could have an argument, embrace debate. The first guy I am going with is Dwayne Haskins. And kind of like the Troy Smith thing, we did not go with a quarterback. I did not go with the quarterback in the John Cooper era. I think even though Ryan Day was the offensive coordinator for Dwayne Haskins, that was Urban Meyer's last team, and he ended up being the greatest Ohio State quarterback of all time for that time, and can still be debated to this day that, however you want to go about that one. But you put Dwayne Haskins on this team. Now, are there questions about the running game? Yes. Was it his fault in 2018? I don't think it wasn't entirely his fault that they weren't able to run the ball. Is this offensive line more equipped? Probably. Is the coaching staff more equipped? Perhaps. So I don't think it would be a huge issue, but it would be such a massive upgrade at quarterback over everybody else they have that I think this was not my first pick, because again, I go by year, going through the starting lineup by year. So it took me a while to get to 2018. But when I'm talking about who I'm going to choose first on this show, it is Dwayne Haskins.
And Dwayne Haskins is a great answer. He was such a dynamic passer. You lose the running element of the quarterback game, but he was just, the arm was there. You look at what they have in terms of running backs this year, and you look at what they have in terms of wide receiver talent this year, and it's just kind of, you want to take, let's cross the streams, Tony. Let's put Ted Ginn and Joey Galloway on this team with Dwayne Haskins. Like, sign me up for that. Let's pick one from each of the different eras. I will happily take those three. Wow. Yeah, that's just like a really intriguing, what would he look like? Frankly, I think I don't have him on my list, but I think you could put JT Barrett in this conversation as well, where JT Barrett might, the JT Barrett at his best is probably better than, similar to, but maybe a little bit better than some of the guys who were on this year's Ohio State team. And, JT Barrett was not always at his best, but he was, I think, he's kind of gotten lost in Ohio State history a little bit because he got followed by Dwayne Haskins and then Justin Fields and then CJ Stroud. And when that's the company you're keeping, like that is hard to keep up with the Joneses in that neighborhood. But, I think he would be another person who you could put on this year's team, and it would be an improvement. I don't have him on that. I don't have him on my list, but I think if we're going to talk quarterbacks, I think you could put him on that list as well.
Braxton
would be fun. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And Braxton, it feels like we never actually got to see the full final form of Braxton Miller because he got hurt and, missed the 2014 season, and then was not a quarterback anymore in 2015. But, boy, that's, even 2013 Braxton Miller was pretty darn exciting and would be, you put him in a Chip Kelly offense, like, oh boy, that you could really see something spectacular there.
Well, and it's kind of old school with the running quarterback aspect, but we saw old school work last year on offense for Michigan, a different kind of old school. So maybe you've moved so far past the era when defenses really had to worry about somebody like a Braxton Miller. But, the Chip Kelly aspect of it would be very interesting to see what he would do with Braxton Miller. He would probably, do you think he would keep him at quarterback, or would he happily move him to, a different position?
Boy, I guess who else is on this team? He might, you put him on, you put 2013 Braxton Miller on this team. He's probably your best option at quarterback. So, but man, it's, you could do a lot of different stuff with him. You could run some multi QB packages. That there's a lot you could do there. With Braxton Miller under center. So yeah, that would certainly be fun. Let's see, where do I want to start? Because I think, I think there might be better players out there, but I wouldn't mind seeing like a Taylor Decker on this team, just in terms of a potential upgrade on the offensive line. Like, slide him in there at one of the tackle spots, and we're sort of having the same conversation we had with Corey Stringer, where you want to slide him at left tackle and you kick Josh Simmons over to right tackle. And, Taylor Decker, I believe, did play both tackle positions over his course of his Ohio State career. So you could start him at right tackle, and slide Josh Fryer into right guard or whatever. Wherever he is, you're probably, if you do that, you're probably upgrading two different spots on the line. So you're kind of getting a little bit of a 2-for-1 there. So I think he is not necessarily the Ohio State player that has the most acclaim from the Urban Meyer era. But just in terms of positions where you could maybe upgrade a couple spots by adding one guy, I think that might not be a bad one.
Yeah, first team All-American in 2015, first round NFL draft pick for the Lions. He was the guy that I had. He was actually one of my top 3 that I had before I had to move him down and put somebody else in. But again, you look like the concerns are on the right side of the offensive line. Well, boom, this guy makes all the sense in the world. Competed for a starting job as a true freshman at right tackle. Didn't win it, but was competing, and then took over from there. So I think that's completely, that's a smart decision. That's another one where the fans are like, boring, but it's like that's the one where it solidifies everything you're looking for, and it lets all of the offensive coaches sleep better at night. You no longer have to worry anymore. It's like just the absence of worry is worth so much for coaches. So I think that would be a good one. The reason I removed him, though, from my list, Tom, is I'm going to go with Ryan Shazier. And again, they've got interesting depth at linebacker with Cody Simon as a starter and CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles mixing it up with the will linebacker position. But Ryan Shazier, nobody has been a better playmaker, more impactful. You go look back at his numbers in 2013, 140 some tackles, 23 tackles for loss, 23 and a half tackles for loss. Just an incredible playmaker in the backfield constantly. The best athlete that Ohio State has ever had at linebacker. Is there a need for him? I think when you look at the question marks on defense, is there a bigger question mark than linebacker, especially the will linebacker? Sure, you've got 2 5-star guys slated to play it, but 2 birds in one hand versus Ryan Shazier. Like I think I'm leaning Shazier. I know I'm leaning Shazier there because of his. He was just. I've never seen anybody like him, and everybody gets compared to him now. Like C.J. Hicks, he could be a Ryan Shazier type. Well, you know who else is a Ryan Shazier type? Ryan Shazier.
Literally Ryan Shazier. Yeah, that's a really good one. I didn't have him on my list, and now I'm wondering if I have a problem with my selection process, because that's one that I absolutely should have had on my list. Because yeah, it's a spot where they feel I think they feel okay about where they are with linebacker. But yeah, if you could add a elite college and pro linebacker there, could kind of do it all. Yeah, that's a really, really, really good answer there. I have no arguments. I award you 100% on that answer. Well done. Uh, you know, you could go a number of different directions here, and I think I have like 5 different names on the defensive line, and I like them all for slightly different reasons. I'm gonna go, Tony, with Draymond Jones. I feel
Ooh.
like the outside, I feel a little bit better about the depth on the outside of the defensive line than I do on the interior. So, I mean, Draymond Jones, you throw him in there at 3-tech, and you could just, he was just so disruptive throughout his career at Ohio State. Just made big plays. Didn't he have 2 pick sixes in 2018, I believe? He was just such a disruptive force in there. And again, not the biggest name, not the splashiest player, but he was just so good when he was out there. And, I think that's a spot where, like, there are a pair of brothers that we will probably get to a little later on in the show who played a little bit of defensive line for Ohio State as well during the Urban Meyer era and did okay for themselves. But I think Draymond Jones just fitting in just to that middle of that defensive line, giving them a little more depth to rotate through, and also to just be such a disruptor in the middle of that line. I think he's gonna be my next guy.
I really like that one. One of my favorite stats was his redshirt freshman year of 2016. And I'm trying to bring it up real quick right now. That was the year Jabril Peppers was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. But that was also the same year, I think, in conference games, Peppers only had one more tackle than Draymond Jones that year in conference games because he was just so disruptive. He was so active. He was everywhere. He was in the backfield. He's making plays at the line of scrimmage. Just really, really impressive. Was not a first-team All-American. I thought he was. I just went through the record book and didn't have him in there. He was first-team All-Big Ten guy. But I like that one. It gives them the depth that they need as it has continued to be successful at the next level. Tom, you know how we take these right tackles and we bring them in, and it's like, you can play them anywhere. You can move this guy to that to guard. You bring in Nick Bosa, which is what I'm doing. And I don't care, JT Tuimoloau, you are now a 3-tech. Or, you know what, Nick Bosa, you can play inside. Or you don't have to, because Nick Bosa, Sam Hubbard, Tyquan Lewis, Jalen Holmes all coexisted together 2016, 2017. Got along swimmingly. And so I think you can do that here. I think if you have an opportunity to go get one of the most disruptive players in defensive line history at Ohio State, you go do it. Plus, his 2018 season got cut short. We didn't get a chance to see Chase Young and Nick Bosa together. And so that's not that we could with this, but to give Nick Bosa an opportunity to close out his career on his own terms by traveling into the future, like we all wish we could, and be put on this team. I think I'm going to put him on there and figure it out later. And I think whatever way we figure it out, it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, there are a couple of guys in here. You want to throw Nick Bosa on this team, you want to throw Joey Bosa on this team. I think you can throw any of those guys on there, and it's just kind of, you figure it out. And oh no, they have to play the Rushman package now every down. Guess what? They'll probably be fine. I think Nick Bosa is going to be fairly disruptive on the defensive front, and JT Tuimoloau can probably play inside if needed. And yeah, you can just kind of sort that out, and that's file that under good problems to have. I mean, there's a lot of defensive linemen from that era of Ohio State football who I think you could throw on here. I had written down Tyquan Lewis, who I think is one of those really, really underappreciated players from that era. I mean, even during that time, I remember thinking, like, I don't think we're talking about Tyquan Lewis enough in terms of what he's doing, because you're talking about Nick Bosa and you're talking about Joey Bosa and you're talking about Sam Hubbard and all those guys. It feels like you look at his numbers looking back and like, man, he was just so disruptive. Yeah, I'm fine with pretty much just about any of those early Larry Johnson era Ohio State players I would throw on there. We can talk about an earlier Ohio State defensive lineman from the Urban Meyer era, maybe a little later on in the show. We also do need to do the remembering some guys, because I was just scrolling through the 2013 roster and I'm like, oh boy, there are some names on here, some names that I used to think about and have not thought about in about 10 years. So maybe we'll end the show with remembering some guys. But before we get there, Tony, we've done a tight end on each of these shows.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm still looking to upgrade Ohio State's tight end in the Urban Meyer era. But Jeff Heuerman. Jeff Heuerman was really, really good. He in the 2014 season saw his numbers dip quite a bit because he was kind of splitting time with Nick Vannett. But 2013 he put up some big numbers. I think he was over 400 yards receiving that year. And let me pull it up here. Yeah, 26 catches, 466 yards, 17.9 yards per catch, Tony. Do you think Ohio State would take 17.9 yards per catch on 26 catches from its tight end one this year? I feel like that might be okay.
Yeah, and I think one of those games, he might have gone over 100 yards. I'm bringing him up real quickly. He was 116 yards at Purdue on 5 catches. I believe that might be the last 100-yard game for an Ohio State tight end. I think Cade Stover hit the 90-yard mark a time or two. I was with you on Heuerman. The reason I did not have him here is because I couldn't decide between Nick Vannett or Jeff Heuerman. So you're like, you know what? I'm not going to choose either one of you. Sorry. And it was kind of like the Joe Germain, Bobby Hoying from our Cooper era show. If I'm having trouble picking one of you, I'm not going to pick either one of you. I don't want to upset anybody. We know the reach and the emotion that this show has and can cause. Don't want to be party to that. We are already divisive enough as a country. I don't want to upset the Heuermans versus the Vannetts. Don't need a blood feud on my hands. That's why I didn't go with the tight ends, but I do like it. I think when you're looking at areas to upgrade, he was really, really good and played for a really long time and was always solid and wore some fantastic shirts to Ohio State check-in day that would cause some consternation from Ohio State's media team.
Bring extreme joy to Jerry Emmig's heart, I'm sure, every time, if memory serves correctly.
Yeah, and basically what happened is Jeff Heuerman showed up one day, and for the hotel check-in day, everybody's favorite day of the year, hotel check-in day. Sometimes we were allowed to interview players, but Jerry Emmig, the SID, Ohio State SID, would grab them and say, okay, here's Baron Browning for 4 minutes. Here's Jeff Heuerman for 4 minutes. When he grabbed Jeff Heuerman, he's like, here's Jeff Heuerman for 4 minutes. So we're all around him, all have our cameras on him. And that's when Jerry sees that Jeff Heuerman is wearing an F cancer shirt spelled out. And then he's like, oh no. And just the expletive being the biggest concern there, but always a good time. Plenty of, and the crazy thing, Tom, there's more than just one shirt story about check-in day. We could do an entire show on shirts on check-in day or just appearances on check-in day. And I'm sure people would love it.
Yeah, boy, hotel check-in day. We talk about all the milestone days and the Ohio State calendar coming up, and Big Ten Media Days coming up, and the start of camp on August 1st, and then the season starts, and it's like, whoa. Can't leave out hotel check-in day. That is an absolute milestone. The dumbest milestone on the Ohio State calendar, but a milestone nonetheless. All right, Tony, I'm going to hit one more defensive lineman because I feel like you've got, there are plenty of big names and we can talk about the big names, but it just, Ohio State does not really need another running back this year. Sorry. Like there are good running backs in the Urban Meyer era, but I think I'm going to wait on that. Tony, can we talk about John Simon? Because this is one of these, like, they don't need a defensive end. They don't, he could play wherever. he was another guy who, his Ohio State career, he didn't miss as much time as Nick Bosa, but boy, the end of his Ohio State career was they were supposed to play, they're playing Michigan in 2012, and he was going to give it a go no matter what, and just literally they could not do it physically that day, and that was the end of his career. No one who put up a bigger, better work ethic. No one who was more beloved by coaches and strength staff and all those guys just absolutely did everything he ever needed to do. I would love to see John Simon get to end his career playing on potentially a national championship Ohio State team, getting to play Michigan one more time, getting to, all the stuff that he didn't do. And frankly, I think he probably brings something to this Ohio State's team. Talked about Rob Murphy a couple shows ago, and, just sort of the nastiness. Like, I think he would bring some edge to the Ohio State defensive line room. Not that they're lacking it, but just, hey, a little more never hurt. So, yeah, I would, he's not one of my top three, but he was one of those names that I looked at and I went, oh yeah. That would be fun to have him on this year's team.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. And we talked in the first show of this series about righting a wrong by bringing Joey Galloway into modern football. You'd be righting a wrong by bringing John Simon back to play Michigan final regular season game at home, and then maybe make up for it with maybe another game or two against Michigan down the line. But you want somebody that's going to give you everything he's got. That's the guy that will do it. So I like that one. You're talking about big names on the defensive line, Tom. And how about Big Hank? That was the guy that I had listed here. Jonathan Hankins, defensive tackle depth, could play either defensive tackle spot. There were times Jim Tressel had him as a strong side defensive end, 330 pounds out there rushing the passer. He could do it all. I think is still getting paid in the NFL. A guy that would do some pretty good things for the Ohio State defensive line in this one. I'm looking, here's an offensive lineman for you, Tom, who could play anywhere on the interior by the name of Pat Elflein, who would solidify whatever you need. You want to solidify right guard? Boom. You want to move Seth McLaughlin or Carson Hinsman to right guard and you need a center? Boom. You need a left guard? Whatever you need on the interior, that guy's going to do it because he's done it. And he was an All-American, maybe a two-time All-American, the 1,007th rated recruit of the 2012 recruiting class, somebody that would never have gotten an offer if Urban Meyer had gotten to Ohio State a year earlier, but was part of the class and kept Meyer allowed him to sign, basically, if my math is remembering correctly. And it turned out pretty well for Ohio State. And I think that's a guy that you could use on this offensive line.
And I had him on my sort of long list, and I had Pat Elflein / Billy Price, because I view those two guys as more or less interchangeable, because just about all the stuff you said, other than the recruiting ranking, was basically true of Billy Price as well. You could put him in at guard, you could put him in at center. Both of them won the Remington Award. I mean, those are both guys who anywhere in there, and you know what? You could put both of them on this year's team, and that probably helps this year's team too. You can upgrade 2 spots there. You could upgrade 2 spots by sliding one guy in there, or you can upgrade and sliding someone else over, or you could upgrade both spots by sliding both guys in there. That's I think those are both very, very good additions. All right, we need to say the name Ezekiel Elliott so people don't freak out. Tony, Ezekiel Elliott was a very good football player for Ohio State and ran for a number of yards and some rather big plays over the years. And yes, of course, he would be a good addition to this year's team. They have a couple other very good running backs. So, Ezekiel Elliott's not on my top 3 for the same reason that Eddie George was not on my top 3. But, if they're playing Georgia in the national championship game and a 2014 Ezekiel Elliott trots in off the sideline, I mean, I don't think Ohio State fans are mad about it.
No, it's like the glass breaks and out comes Ezekiel Elliott. That's something that's going to get people fired up, but also a guy that can do several different things on offense. I talked about in the previous show, Eddie George being that H-back hybrid type. Ezekiel Elliott can play in a 2-back set, can run block, can catch the ball, can play in the slot, can do a lot of things. You could add Curtis Samuel to that list if you want to do more with the receiving game. If you want to do even more with the receiving game, you could add Dontre Wilson to that list if Jalen Marshall, all of these different hybrid kinds of guys. But I think a lot of people are going to say, I don't care who else is on the team. I want Ezekiel Elliott, and can't really fault him. I mean, he was remarkably consistent, about as, but Quinshon Judkins has been that consistent in his 2 years as well. But Elliott, the way he closed 2014, I think that will live forever and put him on this list for a bunch of different people. I've got another offensive lineman for you, and you can put him anywhere because he played everywhere. Jack Muhort, he could play. He could legitimately play right tackle for you, left tackle, left guard, right guard, center, because I think he played every single one of those positions at Ohio State, and is a guy that would be your swing guy. You start him wherever somebody goes down, boom, that's that's Jack Muhort, or wherever you need him to play. He could do that for you. Corey Lindsley at center also played guard. A really, really good player. So I think those are two other guys on the offensive line. I think I've got one last name for you here. No, actually two, Tom. Raekwon McMillan, two-time second-team All-American at middle linebacker. But again, I think they're okay at middle linebacker. But again, Cody Simon can play well. Speaking of Will, what about arguably the most underrated defensive player? Although now that I'm saying about it, I've already broken my rule, Tom. I was going to say Pete Werner, but he was 2019. So I'm going to strike this from the record. I will edit this out so that I don't look like a fool and break my own rule. No Pete Werner, just Raekwon McMillan. That's the last guy I have on my list.
Yeah, Raekwon McMillan's a good one, and he's someone who, it felt like they were maybe sort of figuring out how to use him right at the end of his tenure at Ohio State. So if you could take that knowledge and apply it moving forward, Jim Knowles might be able to use him in some creative ways. I think he's a good addition to this year's team. Tony, what if I told you there was a wide receiver who averaged 28.2 yards per catch on 33 receptions, 12 of which went for touchdowns? Tony, would that be a player you would be interested in adding to this year's Ohio State team?
Only if Ohio State has never lost a game in his career when he has caught a touchdown.
Well, Tony, I have great news for you. They never lost a game where Devin Smith caught a touchdown, and he caught 30 of them. So that's quite a number of games to have won. So yes, I think he's another one that you probably need to throw on that list as well somewhere, because pretty darn good. Michael Thomas, pretty darn good. There's a bunch of kind of at this point we just kind of go like it's any of 57 receivers could all be good. Tony, I do need to just unburden myself of some names that I was reading as I was looking up Nick Vannett's or Jeff Heuerman's stats earlier in the show. I pulled up the 2013 Ohio State roster and I was like, boy, there are some names on here, Tony. I'm just gonna read them off, and I'll give you like 6 or 8 of them, and then you can share your thoughts. I just want to share this. Just want to lay this, Tony, at the foot of the cross. How about running back Warren Ball? How about wide receiver Frank Epitropoulos? Can I interest you in defensive lineman Chris Carter? What defensive lineman Tommy Shutt? How about freshman linebacker Trey Johnson, Tony? How about cornerback Armani Reeves? How about can I interest you in any of those names? Just in terms of a trip down memory lane, I got to tell you, Warren Ball was like, that took me back to a very specific time during the very early Urban Meyer recruiting classes where I was like, man, he is getting all of these dudes. It is crazy.
Warren Ball, part of the 2012 recruiting class with Briante Dunn, and the back and forth with Briante Dunn about him or Michigan, that was a concern. Armani Reeves was a steal from Penn State. He was committed to Penn State along with, I think, Cam Williams, who also flipped to Ohio State. Tommy Shutt was thought to be going to Penn State, was a 5-star defensive tackle, and he shows up to Ohio State, and he's like 6 foot, like 300 pounds. Like, he did not look like you would expect a 5-star defensive tackle to look. Was Noah Spence, was he already gone by then? Because he was part of that 2012 class. I can't remember. He played as a sophomore, didn't he? Or did he not?
I think he was on that team. Yes, he was on that team.
Chris Carter was part of that. Chris Carter was part of that really bad offensive line class. with Tommy Brown and Antonio Underwood were, and no offense, like they're all like Ohio guys, and that was the best they could do, and got those guys locked in. And Chris Carter eventually at least played some defensive tackle. Antonio Underwood eventually was a valued reserve guard. But those are also the days when they would have to flip defensive linemen to play offensive line to play defensive line. So some fantastic reminiscing, Tom. Great job by you. There was somebody else I was going to mention that you were talking about earlier, but it's okay. I've forgotten now. And anybody else on
Was
your
it Joey
list?
Bosa?
Did we touch all of them? Joey,
Was it Joey Bosa? Because I know I said his name at one point. I don't know if we went into any detail on him, but that's another one where go ahead and I'm going to get ready for Big Ten Media Days, Tony, by telling you to, ready? Talk about Joey Bosa for a minute, because I feel like that's a name that people are going to want to hear about.
Yeah, no, he's on my list as well. We did kind of brush past it, but a guy that I remember thinking he was listed as a defensive end in high school as a recruit as like 260, 275 pounds. It's like, well, he's going to show up. He's going to play defensive tackle because he's too big to play defensive end. And he shows up at Ohio State and they've got him at defensive end. And I still remember watching Mike Vrabel, the defensive line coach at the time, just really, really rip into him out on the practice field. This isn't St. Thomas Aquinas anymore, and just really getting after him. And I think we probably talked about the contrast from going from Mike Vrabel as your position coach one year to Larry Johnson as your position coach the next year. Like, there are no two greater contrasts in terms of the way that you are communicated to. But yeah, Joey Bosa was fantastic. 10 starts as a true freshman, was in the backfield, was never looked like a freshman. And I think maybe my favorite Joey Bosa story is Adolphus Washington, who was also a 5-star defensive end in the 2012 class, missed some time, which is why I think Washington was the starter for like the first 3 games of the 2013 season. Missed some time, and then that's when Joey Bosa stepped in to be the starter. And then like Adolphus Washington realized from being injured and watching Joey Bosa is like, well, guess I'm gonna have to move to defensive tackle now if I really want to play, because 2013 it was Noah Spence was on that team as well, as you said. So yeah, there was a lot. Urban Meyer came in, and the way he closed that recruiting class was really impressive. But you go back and look, and it was all of the guys that were already in the class, like Joshua Perry, Pat Elfline. I know there are others in that class that are towards the back of the line that really solidified things, and guys that I don't know would have been Buckeyes if they hadn't already been committed.
Yeah, that's kind of was. I remember at the time how excited everyone was about this, just a like tidal wave of commitments coming in, guys who had offers from just about everywhere, and the dominoes fell, just boom, 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 as soon as Urban Meyer showed up. But you're right, a lot of those guys didn't end up panning out, even the guys with the big shiny, star rankings and resumes and all that. And it was, some of the less heralded guys who had been committed for a while who ended up being some of the bigger long-term contributors out of that class. But yeah, that was definitely a very exciting off-season for Ohio State fans, the transition out of the 2011 season into the Urban Meyer era, and that turned into a pretty good season. And Tony, feels like we might be having a similar transition this year, coming off of a disappointing end to the 2023 season, but boy, a very optimistic Ohio State offseason heading into what could be, Tony, a pretty good Ohio State football season this fall as well.
Yep, and we are ramping up the discussion, the plans. It's right around the corner. Media Day is fast approaching. Fall camp is right after that, August 1st. I wonder if the 4 practices where the tickets are available for probably have been sold out by now. But August 1st, you're going to start hearing about camp reports. You can find all of that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We're going to be talking about it here at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. So hit the bell to be notified. Subscribe to the channel is a great way to always be notified when we are dropping videos, going live, and all of those sorts of things. And of course, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. sign up, become a member, check us out there. We're going to be there all year long for what could be a very, very special year. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.